Here we go. We're live. This is Pitchdeck Asia, powered by Asia Tech Podcast. My name is Graham Brown. Yeah, joining me in the studio, the happy face of Bob Chua. Bob, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here all the way from KL.
Yep.
You feeling all right?
I am so far.
Yeah, up for it. Good for you.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about BlinQ. So you'll start up your journey. You've been making a bit of noise recently. So
A bit, yep.
yeah, good to see.
Thank you.
And disrupting,
Thank
as
you.
is the word
I
of
hope
the
so.
hour, right?
I hope
So
so.
we got your pitch deck. We're going to go through that.
All right.
Talk a little bit about you,
Mhm.
your journey, your background, the why.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Maybe we can start at the top. BlinQ itself. How would you
Right.
describe yourself so that people can understand?
Sure. I think the name itself says quite a bit. I mean, the name is sort of a play on words. So a bit of bling because we're in sort of a luxury fashion line, and BlinQ because we're in augmented reality. So when I explain a bit about what we do, it'll probably make a lot more sense. So what we do is effectively we're a luxury fashion platform. We leverage AR, augmented reality, to effectively augment costumes and accessories and outfits onto a user via mobile devices. And the user can effectively then buy, rent, subscribe that outfit. It's all luxury stuff. And we fulfill that throughout Southeast Asia. So that's sort of our playing space.
Excellent. I know you did a demo to one of our team, to
I
Sean out there,
did,
so he
yeah.
was suitably impressed.
He used your credit card, by the way.
As long as he was renting it, not buying it. So, okay. We love those sort of tech demos that you can do on the spot. So we're going to have a look at the pitch deck. You've got some great sort of visuals and examples in there. Maybe I can start by defining the market. I'm not going to do your pitch deck in necessarily the order that you put it out,
No,
but we
that's
can sort of
fine.
jump around and get the key points and the key data. So if we can just have a quick look at the data.
All right.
And if I can sort of like zoom to the end of the pitch deck here, I'm just going to flick through a whole bunch of slides. And bearing in mind, not everybody can see this. Some people are actually listening, so we might have to be a bit descriptive. But you've got this great slide. As I say to any startup that comes here, sell the money, put the billions up front.
Absolutely.
So to help us understand what market we're in and put some numbers on it.
Yeah, look, it's funny because, I think this pitch deck is almost outdated now, and this was just prepared last month, and, the numbers and the metrics in this part of the world is just going through the roof, right? I think to summarize, the sort of addressable market that we're in, personal luxury in this part of the world, and I'm talking about Asia, is around the $300 billion mark. This is last year, based on McKinsey's report. Next year, 2020, is going to be about $500 billion. In this part of the world, it's about 44% of that, right? So very, very, very large marketplace. And the growth numbers are also staggering. So, I always look at this region and I sort of sum it up as having the trifecta effect, which is very young population, big number of consumers. We're talking about, say, 600 million people in ASEAN alone. I'm not even talking about, say, Australia, India, and the rest of Asia. And an increasingly wealthy audience, right? And I think the next thing, I can go on for other trifectas, which is very digitally savvy, very sticky on the internet, high e-commerce activity, but a huge passion for luxury consumption. And that's just Asia, So, I mean, we're sitting here in Singapore, probably one of the epicenters of luxury. Hong Kong's another one. But you're getting these other pockets of segments of population that are growing in numbers, places like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, etc. So, the numbers speak for itself, and I think we're really in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, you talk about that sort of rising tide of consumers. I mean, obviously China is its own thing. Without
I'm not
China,
even talking about China.
Exactly,
Yeah,
because people think, oh, well, if you put China, it skews all the data. That's 95% of it.
Absolutely.
Maybe. But on its own, Southeast Asia, you've got this rising tide of middle class. I mean, obviously we're aware of Crazy Rich Asians. You've seen that's all there, but there's this, not just a middle class, and 2/3 of the world's middle class will be living in Asia by 2030 as well. That's, for those outside of Asia that are watching, that's the mind-blowing data out there. But you also have, and you've got it in your pitch deck as well, a very young population. I think, for example, if you take Indonesia, 50% of Indonesians are under the age of 35.
Absolutely.
Which is incomprehensible if you sort of put it by comparison to the US or Europe, which is very much aging populations, aren't they?
Yes.
And then digital savvy that you talk. So that's your triage that you talk about, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
okay, we'll have a look more in the pitch deck as well. And if we can just jump back in as well, without sort of preempting what we're going to talk about too much, you have the unicorns as well. Just to sort of put some context in here, because obviously every time we talk about Asia, from the outside looking in, it's always China.
Yeah, sure.
Alibaba, Tencent, etc.
Yeah.
The reason why I want to talk about this now is talk about Southeast Asia in its own context and the unicorns. Maybe you can educate us and understand what's going on in Southeast Asia right now with unicorns.
Well, look, I think even unicorns in this part of the world is sort of outdated now. We're talking about decacons and other things, right? So, some of these guys are friends of mine. They've done extremely well. China is a whole different animal and a beast by itself. But I think a lot of the external, say, investment community, VCs and whatnot, everyone, as you said, has been focused purely on China, purely on India, and the US, obviously in the Valley. But, look at this graph here. You've got about, 10 unicorns come up from Norway in the past 5 years that we never even had 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Can you explain this graph? Because those maybe be listening won't be able to see it. So you've got Grab at the top.
You've got Grab with Anthony. He did extremely well. He's on probably series. I lose count when I look at the sort of rounds they go for. I mean, in the billions of dollars, and they're on G, E, or H, or F, or whatever now.
Right.
And there's just so much money being poured into companies like that. Gojek, you've got C, who raised, I think, another 1.5 yesterday. You've got Lazada, who was acquired by Alibaba. You've got Bukalapak in Indonesia, and a whole host of others.
Traveloka and so on.
Traveloka, etc. I think if we look at this graph next year, there'll probably be about another 10 on here.
Yeah.
So, I think the market is just so hot right now and so hungry for growth that, I think if we get the ingredients right, the entrepreneurs who see that sort of opportunity, we're going to see a continuance of more and more of these sorts of companies coming up.
All right. Well, it checks the box.
Yes,
there's market potential there. There's money. There's growth.
Absolutely.
There's consumers with money.
That's right.
Let's talk about what the problem is first. So if I can jump back in, right at the top of the pitch deck, I think it's slide 8. I'm going to sort of, so you've defined what the problem is. Am I there yet? Okay, so yes, retail. You talked about luxury market, your 300 to 500 billion market.
Yeah.
What is the problem with this market? I'm not somebody from the inside. I understand what fashion is, the success of brands like ASOS and so on. But what is the inherent problem with this market?
I think the problem and hence the opposite of that, which is the opportunity. I'll probably talk about both of those factors. The mega trends in the retail market, as we see it in more developed markets like the US and Europe, is that one, real estate is getting extremely expensive. That's just effectively stores being renting from big malls, etc., and that's getting very, very expensive. The format of stores is not conducive to how people shop nowadays. Everyone's buying online. Everyone gets everything from, say, an Amazon or Alibaba, what have you. And also the tyranny of now. Everyone expects something today, in an hour. You look at Prime and all these other services. So, you've got other factors like weather patterns. You've got, winter that hits certain markets that, people then can't go out shopping and these sorts of things. So I think when you look at that sort of those sort of factors, it does affect retail in a big way. I think what we're doing in terms of using augmented reality to enable consumers to try on outfits, having the marketplace where you can not just acquire an outfit outright, but you can also rent it, subscribe to it, curate it, and then fulfilling that to the consumer very quickly. The real problem that we're addressing is the returns. Now, if you look at an e-commerce setup in, say, a peak of Singles Day, Singles Day, all the e-commerce guys do billions,
25 billion,
in sales per day, right?
Yeah.
Now, in a peak like that, the returns for the purchases are about 60%.
Yeah.
That means 6 out of 10 products actually go back to a warehouse somewhere. And this gets piled into a mountain of stuff. I mean, I've seen this with my own eyes, and it's like going to Egypt and seeing the friggin' pyramids.
Yeah.
But it's just pyramids of
60%
crap that never gets unpacked, re-cleaned, re-dry cleaned, repacked into the store and back into the system.
Right.
It just doesn't. So it's a huge cost to brands, a huge cost to retailers, and a huge cost to logistics companies. Now, I think millennials are also partly to blame with this trend, because they're ordering 2 or 3 different outfits and using it for Instagram photos. They're not sure about their size or whether it'll fit them, so they're taking 3 or 4 outfits of the same thing and returning it because it's free returns. Right. So, I think that causes a huge problem. So that is really the problem we're trying to solve.
But I'll chime in here, is that retailers like ASOS, for example, actively encourage that, don't they? That, why don't you just try it all and send it back? And they have the it seems like they're okay with that.
Well, ASOS isn't necessarily the owner of their product, right? So this thing goes back to, ASOS is a marketplace, but a product is owned by a Chanel or a Gucci or what have you. Those guys are the ones that face a problem, and it's a huge cost to them.
Right.
Now, the other problem is that an ASOS or Farfetch or what have you, they're in the US or Europe, and some people, while they're aware of them in this part of the world, they may order from those guys, but have you tried returning something to them?
Exactly.
It's impossible. Yeah. And secondly, the cost of shipping is impossible. The time of shipment is impossible. So those are the areas, when you look at the flip side of what BlinQ is trying to fix.
Okay, got it. I mean, I can relate. For somebody like me who is size, 46 shoe, European size. Not easy to get. Not a show off. It's a pain point.
No,
if somebody else can do a website with like large shoes, here I am, right? So I have to order. So I can't order stuff here in Singapore. And if I order stuff from AliExpress, for example, because there's a lot of range on there, they send it to me. And we were talking about this today, is that I'll receive it, spent all that money getting it, wrong size, or what they claim is a 13 is actually a 9 or a 10.
That's right.
For me, I can't send it back. So
that's right.
That's a real pain point as a consumer. And that's not just AliExpress, that's also ASOS. I can order ASOS from the UK to Singapore, but I can't return it. So
absolutely. So I think talking about size, and you know what they say about guys with big feet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
big shoes.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole point about sizing is a big factor that we had to take into consideration as well, because when we started around the AR technology of taking a photo, then augmenting all these outfits onto people, we actually thought it was quite gimmicky. I'll be totally honest. But we then found that a lot of our users on our trial panels actually said, look, we love it. One, it I think it'll increase our purchase propensity. It'll decrease our returns, but we want sizing. Okay, just to your point, because if I can predict that I'm a size M, I'm talking about, say, a dress or a shirt or a blouse or what have you. The other problem is that all the brands have different sizing. So an M on Chanel might be a S on Gucci, for example, and not having that ability to see what size you actually wear is also not going to factor the decrease in returns. So we actually had to build algorithms around proper sizing, and I think I showed it to you guys earlier on. It's probably in the deck, whereby we actually get accurate measurements of you, and we can actually then tell you you're actually an M or you're a size 14 or a size 10 for this specific brand, this specific dress. And our female consumers loved it, because they've said, I've spent way too much time, or I've not purchased online because of this problem. Yeah. So the fact that you guys have factored in that feature, it's fantastic. I definitely feel much safer about purchasing online. It's
building trust, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're taking a lot of the friction out.
So
of the
that's
process.
the gap. That's the gap that we're filling.
Can we, just before we look at the solution, can we understand a little bit about the returns as well? So you've talked about sizing. I mean, if you were to sort of mention, break it down, what would be the main criteria? What causes returns? You've talked about sizing. You've talked about millennials, and maybe that's just what they do. Yeah. Look, what else is there?
I think really, returns is you're going to get something that either doesn't fit you from a size perspective, or it just it doesn't look right once you actually get it, right? So that's the main reason that you return it. So if you thought that, okay, it looks nice on a catalog, it looks nice on a website, but when you actually receive it, it looks like crap on me.
Yeah, especially the materials that look different.
Yeah, and the materials look different. The video, the feel of it looks different. Yeah. So, I think those are the main factors. And I think a lot of people say, look, but your stuff's one thing that you guys don't fulfill is the fact that we can't touch it anymore.
Yeah.
But we then thought about that, and we looked at our the customer journey in terms of where they were going before they actually meet the point of purchase, which is actually checking out and paying for the product. So we had a lot of trials, and about 70% of them were actually going through the entire process of searching, comparing, looking at sizing, getting themselves augmented. But when it came to the point of purchase, they would drop off for a day. So they didn't.
You mean offline?
Yeah. So they'd stop, at a certain point, like about 95%, and they'd disappear for about a day, and they'd come back and complete a purchase.
Right. So it's the showroom, isn't it? They've gone to the showroom to effectively check it out.
Try it on. And, that showroom probably didn't carry the right model or color or SKU that you're talking about. So they came back and purchased it online, which is amazing. So we did actually get the feel. Yeah. So it's interesting, consumer behavior now.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's have a look at the solution itself. And obviously, a key part of this is AR as well. Yes. So we're going to go a little bit deeper in the tech side of things. Sure. If we can jump back into the pitch deck, digging into the pitch deck, the actual, if we can look at, this is slide 10, the BlinQ Eco-System. So explain what it is. I mean, this is sort of the breakdown of the different layers of what BlinQ is, right?
Absolutely.
Help us understand
I think this is probably the most important slide of the entire deck, to be honest. I mean, when I explain what BlinQ is to people, it's quite a big full stack, if you will. And the front part is really the AR. The technology is all around AR. Right. The virtual changing room is probably the easiest that we can understand, right? Because it's effectively me taking a photo of a friend, because usually you need two people to do this, which is great. So for every sign-on, I get two people. Yeah,
it's more social as well.
It's more social, and then they get the measurements. You get to AR the outfits onto yourself, all via mobile, and there's a lot of stuff that we're experimenting with. There's a lot of R&D around the AR component. Some store owners, some mall owners, some developers are saying, what can you do in store? Right. And I'll come back to that later. But that's a technology piece. So the whole augmented reality is, one, to us, a differentiator. And I think for our users, they like it because it actually addresses those issues of decreasing returns, increasing purchase propensity. You can visualize how it looks on me, etc. Now, the platform, the part in the middle is really quite interesting because, I think e-commerce is all about looking at something online, having it ready to wear, and purchasing it. But if you're looking at the trends of how people consume fashion nowadays, it's not all about that.
Not all about purchase.
Not all about purely purchase. Yeah. I mean, if you look at some of the bigger players in the US, for example, like Rent the Runaway. Yeah. These guys very successful. Yeah. I mean, they're doing about $100 million a year now, purely in rental. And, if you look at their operations, they're the biggest laundromat in the world because, they get all this stuff back. And, the economics of them doing that is also quite interesting because they get to effectively defray a cost 10 times and make actually more money per sale over that period of time. So we're providing options to use this now to not only buy, but also to rent, also to have a marketplace for pre-owned, which is also a big thing. If you look at, say, the RealReal in the US, they're about to go public. Again, another multi-billion-dollar unicorn. Subscription, if you look at a Stitch Fix model of giving different options to people who aren't that creative and they want someone to help curate fashion for them. So to us, we look at the life cycle of fashion and we said, since we're sort of leapfrogging all of these technologies, and why can't we provide all of these options to someone? For the same dress, for the same shirt, for the same jacket, I could provide it as an option in multiple ways through our marketplace. Now, operationally, it's a nightmare for us because all of these components operationally are very different. From selling a product from our fulfillment center to you is very different from getting it sent to you, coming back, and cleaning it and renting it back out to someone else. Operationally, it's very different. But to our consumers, they don't care about that. But they love the fact that I can actually give them an option from a price point, from a range of fashion and that sort of stuff. So that's the middle of the marketplace, which is also quite unique, but something that we do here. And the last part is really the logistics stuff. Now, if you look at the big e-commerce players, at the end of the day, what they are logistics players. It's all about fulfillment, getting product to someone in as short as possible a time. And they're CRM players, right? So they know what you want, they know when you want it, they know that customer journey and how to give you that customer experience. What they may be dabbling in the space of general e-commerce products, whether it's washing machines to phone covers to USB sticks, or it may be luxury fashion. It doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, all of us are in the space of e-commerce and CRM.
Yeah.
So the logistics piece is really important, and that's the real differentiator, because the scale of the business now becomes quite different. If I can fulfill a luxury product to the whole of Southeast Asia overnight, for example, as opposed to getting something from the US or Europe in, say, a week, I think our customers would like that, because everyone wants something now. And if they can return it, if they can resort it, etc. So, that's something that we're thinking is going to be a differentiator, and we're building that facility now that can fulfill to Southeast Asia. Very capital intensive, but we're going on a very sophisticated, fully automated warehousing concept. So, yeah, we're sitting down with the engineers tomorrow, in fact, to build this out, conceptualize it, and see what it's going to look like.
Exciting times. So let me ask you, before we sort of go into the tech stack a little bit and look at some of the examples, what qualifies you to build this? Do you, when you start talking about building a marketplace and logistics, Amazon took many years to get that right. Even building like FBA and all those sort of things now that seem obvious, and Prime and so on. These are simple on the face of it, but extremely complex and expensive tasks,
Absolutely.
right? So how do you, justify the critics who may say you're not of that world necessarily, or, you don't,
well, in fact,
have the kind of resources that they have?
Yeah, in fact, I am from that world, because for the past 3 years, I've been a director of a company who actually provided solutions to these players. That actually gave me the impetus to start BlinQ. I got a sneak peek into how, first of all, the pain points, the gaps, the problems, and I got to see the benefits of automation in the warehousing and the e-commerce world. And that actually gave me the idea that, I think I can pull this all together and put it into BlinQ. And the other half of my life was in analytics. So the whole part about CRM, building communities in Southeast Asia. I'm merging that 20 years of experience together. So, I think I haven't necessarily faced those critics as yet, but, I think we've got the relevant know-how and the relevant technology out there. Now we just need to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so what's your... I'm fascinated that you come from that analytical side as well. What's your sort of... Bob, what's your hypothesis in the sense that, this is probably what people disagree with you about, and it's sort of the Peter Thiel question is, what is that truth that the world disagrees with you on about your startup? Because there are many e-commerce players like we've seen in Southeast Asia now, and, are they approaching it in a way which, you sort of see something a little bit different? There's a lot of fashion players out there as well. Do you sort of see the problem differently? Is it an analytical problem, a logistics problem? How would you frame it?
I don't think we see the problem differently. I think we probably see the opportunity differently in terms of scale, in terms of, taking those... There's multiple players, as you said, in different parts. There's some people purely in rental, there's people purely in pre-loved, there's some guys purely on the e-commerce side. And you're right, we're trying to pull this whole thing together. There's some guys in logistics. Personally, I think you need all of those components to make it, to a point where it moves the needle. If you want to be like a Alibaba, you want to be like a JD, you want to be like an Amazon, there's no other way you can do it. And I've seen that inside out, in person. So I think if you don't do that, you're not going to play at the scale of the big boys. And we want to have, we have that vision. It's I guess our dream, and the dreaming is the easy part. Making it happen is the hard part, right? So that's where we are now. We're laying the infrastructure and the foundation to get to that level. Do we think we can do it? Yes. If not, I wouldn't be doing it. Do we think it's a crowded space? I don't think so. I think, we especially in luxury fashion, we found that niche, that gap. We found the region, Southeast Asia. We're in the right place at the right time. We've got the ingredients for it. We have the capabilities for it. I think the only thing that's working against us now is time, like any startup, right? We need to move as fast as possible. But just to get an automated logistics facility up and running, for example, a go live may take 16 months and may take, tens of millions of dollars. So it's the ability to fundraise, to deploy, to execute at scale. Those are the challenges. I don't think they're problems, but they're challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, they're worthy challenges.
Yes.
And hopefully that's why you're here, to sort of put it out there as well. So,
that's right.
Okay, let's go a little bit deeper on the tech side if we can. We've looked at your ecosystem. And then maybe if we can look at the pitch deck again, and you sort of go a bit deeper into the tech side here, the product, actually how it works. Yes. Obviously, if we were to demo this live, it would be great. But talk through, because some people are just listening. Yes. So, all right. So Graham and Bob go shopping together, or we're going to do this together. We'll talk through a live demo. How does it actually work? So,
all right. So effectively, look, to whoever can see this, we'll take a mobile phone. We beam up the BlinQ app, and I take a photo of you, for example, and that photo will then allow me to get your measurements, and you'll have a full catalog right next to you of all the different brands. You pick which brand you want, and you pick which outfit you like, and the outfit will overlay over you, and then you say buy. So it's easy as that, right? From the front end, from the user point of view. Obviously, from the back end, in terms of tech stack, it's a whole different ball game. But pretty much that's it.
Right. So you're building like 3D models of those items?
No,
like wireframes.
We're building 2D models. So this is the outcome of Sean earlier on.
Maybe you can show that one up to the camera there. We can see this camera.
Yeah, where's the camera? So this is one of the guys, Sean, who works here, and we put a Gucci. Initially, we put a Gucci dress over him.
Was he pleased with that?
He said he only cross dresses on Friday, apparently. So
there you go.
Yeah. So so we chose something else, and it effectively told us what size he wears, how many people have bought this yesterday, and it augments purely over him, right? Yeah. Now, it's a 2D model because we want to have it done on any mobile device today. Yeah. I think if you look at what's happening with Samsung and Apple in the next few months, all of these phones have about 2 cameras on them. Yeah. You'll start to see 4 cameras and 8 cameras come out on all our mobile devices very soon. Right. Apple are about to launch the AR-enabled phones in summer, and that actually gives you depth around a photo.
Exactly. That's why we have 2 eyes, right?
Correct.
To create depth. Yeah.
Correct. So the 2D becomes almost 3D, and that wraparound of a product over a user becomes quite seamless. Yes. Okay, so the 2D aspect of it can actually become very clean, and the outfit that goes over you looks very realistic. Okay,
so I imagine on the other side, on the merchandise side, you have to measure all the products,
absolutely,
right, and scan them.
And that's the tough part. Right. And nowadays we're doing and we're building visual search into all of our products as well. So you can actually go and go over a magazine or go over something that you've seen online, and that can actually search the product for you. It goes through all the catalogs of stuff online and tell you which product that is, and it can match it to other products that fit with that dress or suit or whatever. So those brown shoes, those brown Todd shoes will go with your Paul Smith suit, for example.
Right. So would I be able to sit here and have a look at your jacket? And
absolutely. That's the whole idea.
Like Shazam did for music,
it's
right?
It's a Shazam for fashion.
Interesting. So if you feel afraid to ask that person where they got those shoes from, I could
absolutely
sneakily take one.
Exactly. So visual search is a big thing. So that's what we've built into the system as well. So it's really exciting stuff. It's a whole new world out there.
Well, I'm always fascinated, Bob, in these instances. Building technology is one thing, but how, and you can obviously see the scenarios and where this will be used and how useful it would be for any kind of consumer, right, who's interested in fashion. Yet I'm also curious, because I think this is really where we can see the 100x here, is how does it change behavior? So how does that change the behavior of retailers? How does it change the behavior of customers, knowing that I can do these things now? Because it just doesn't necessarily mean I buy more. Qualitatively, it might change as well. So have you got any insights there?
Look, I think we're starting to see that behavior change already. I mean, if you talk, say you mentioned retailers earlier on, a lot of retailers are engaging with us now because they can probably see, or they're anticipating the fact that, footfall into malls is probably dropping. Yeah. And purchasing behavior is changing, right? So, a lot of guys and a lot of merchants in stores are actually saying, I want a smaller format store as opposed to a 20,000 square feet thing. And we're starting to explore some R&D with some of these mall owners to say, look, you need a smaller footprint merchant. However, you can actually extend our AR function to them, whereby your smaller format store becomes almost like a showroom. A user will walk into your showroom, will try a product on, but they'll probably buy it online and get the product sent to their house before they get home. so they don't have to carry the product around. You don't have to keep inventory and stock on store. You don't have to have 10 sizes and colors of that shoe taking up expensive real estate in your store when I can fulfill it from a central fulfillment center somewhere else. So these are the sort of innovations that we're coming out with. And I think the retail industry has been probably one of the least innovative in the world. But that's all changing now. China's leading the way. Amazon's leading the way with like cashierless retail outlets and stuff. So we're going to see, we're only at the beginning of this. If you look at statistics of purely e-commerce purchasing in Asia, it's only about 5% right now. In terms of retail. So 95% is still done offline. So the upside is huge. Right, we're just at the beginning. I mean,
there's
US
a lot of headroom there.
A lot of headroom. I mean, the US is about 23%. The UK is about 19%. So we've got a long way to go, but that's going to happen very quickly.
I think so.
For us, it's about building that infrastructure as fast as possible to meet that demand.
There's sort of an interesting scenario where retailers. You're right, Bob. You talk about retail being one of the least innovative vertical sectors of all. And strangely enough, it's one that touches everybody's lives every day. So it should be innovating all the time. Yet a lot of it is to do with economics. And you talked about footprints in that if I'm a retailer and I have a large inventory and I have, bricks and mortar to rent every month and on a 3-year lease or wherever it is. And these are expensive. These are quite punitive as well for some, especially if you're at a high footfall area and so on. It means my margins, my overheads are so high that I can't innovate. I've got to basically do what works and stick with that.
Absolutely.
And yet we've seen this, like, for example, in the food sector where you've had restaurants and this is one of the problems with restaurants, they go out of business because they can't innovate. And along come food trucks. These guys have tiny footprints. They can experiment with different formats and they have that direct to consumer and so on. And, they're just sucking up the whole sort of consumer market because they're giving what consumers want, because they're operating maybe at a fifth or a sixth of the overhead of a high street retailer, right? So, the whole economics does not just mean I have to sell more, but it means I can completely innovate, take risks, and then give customers what we want, what they want, right? And ultimately stay alive long term and grow.
Absolutely. And thrive.
Exactly. Okay, good. Well, we've got that out of the way. Yes. So let's talk about you and the numbers as well. All so right. You've actually got some numbers in here, and I want to dive in on slide 20. Flicking through forward. I want to understand this a little bit. It fascinated me when I...
So
and you might have to be a bit visual in your description as well. This is a picture of a dress.
Yeah, okay. So, I think what we're trying to point out here is to one of the points that I mentioned earlier on. The economics of renting, for example, is about being able to defray that cost over time. So if I sell this dress, I've got an example here of a dress that's worth $100. And if I sell it once, it's a $100 sale. I've made my, say, 20% margin on that.
Right.
And fine, it's a one-off, right? Now, what about if I rent this dress at $20 for 5 times? I get the same $100. But the lifespan of rental, if you look at the industry average, is about 10 times. So if I actually rent this dress for $20 10 times before it comes to what I call end of life, I've actually made $200 from this dress. I've now defrayed it to twice the value of what it is. And at the 10th or the 11th time that, I can't rent it out anymore, I sell it off as a flash sale at 30% off that $100. So I've now effectively made 250% or 230% based on the example.
Right.
So, from a finance point of view, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of witchcraft magic there.
It is, but that is the economics of how these guys are working.
Right.
If you look at rental, you look at all these
Rent
other
the
stuff.
Runway, we talked about them. They're a huge success in
and
the US,
that's
right?
exactly the economics that they use.
Right.
So, it's about defraying that and sweating that asset as many times as possible.
And especially in an industry where the assets are throw away, literally.
That's the other thing.
People buy an expensive dress for an event or for a wedding or, and then that's it, it's done,
and that's
right?
it. So, that's also then the reason that we have a pre-loved market. If you buy that one dress for $1,000 and you're not going to use it again, you can actually resell it as a vintage or on a pre-loved market. So we have all the avenues. This is sort of a full stack. This is sort of a super app for fashion where you can actually go through the different life cycles of a product.
Yeah.
So, I think, we're sort of catering to the different life cycles from a brand new, and I think from an analytic point of view, we know that people will buy outright that little black dress because they want to use it, multiple times. But they may not use an outfit that like a ball gown multiple times. They prefer to rent that once from us rather than buy it. So
I think you also are at the tip of the spear here in Asia, where rental, especially for fashion, is a new concept.
It is. Yep.
In the US at the beginning, rental was associated with certain economic groups, but now it's become a mainstream thing, and Rent the Runway's done really well in educating the market.
Yeah, but it was tough for them in the beginning.
Absolutely.
I mean, they had to beg, to all the retailers to let them have their product on the Rent the Runway platform. Now retailers are begging them to extend their platform to their brands. So, in a way, we've seen all of the mistakes, and I think we've leapfrogged that. Like, Asia is good at leapfrogging certain technologies, and we've leapfrogged all of those lessons that we've been monitoring, and brought the best of breed to Southeast Asia.
Absolutely. There's also that sort of element with Rent the Runway where, like you said, retailers beg to get onto their platform. They have been very successful in working closely with sort of early adopters.
Yes.
So, for example, if you were a dress designer, you don't have the clout to go to a large Sears or whoever it is these days and get distributed, like a mainstream brand. However, they could go to Rent the Runway, get in with these sort of early adopters who want to try stuff, give you feedback, and you sort of create these sort of mini fan bases.
That's right, or community,
Yeah. So they create that sort of feedback loop within. We don't really have that here in Asia.
Well, that's a gap we hope to address. And, I think you brought up an interesting point. I think in luxury, even worse, because you've got the big brands like the Kerings, the LVMHs of the world that probably dominate luxury. Now, in this part of the world, there's also a lot of the small up-and-coming luxury brands that don't see the light of day because they don't have the budget, they don't have a legacy, they don't have all of those things that the bigger brands do. But we want to provide them the platform to be able to distribute product on a global playing field, on a level playing field with these guys globally. So, I think that's sort of a similar analogy of Rent the Runway.
Good. Okay. Maybe we can talk then about what happens next, and also the journey, how you've sort of come to this point.
Right.
So before we get in the slide, because you'll explain this, when did you set up BlinQ?
So, to be honest, officially Gen 1, it's very young. We're putting the team in place. I mean, we've got a skeletal crew right now. We're on a massive hiring drive. We've got about 18 developers developing technology. We've got about, 10 job racks open out there that we're filling right now.
Right.
But we've got the core crew in place, CFO, CTO, etc., head of logistics, buyer, and that will then trickle down into the rest of the folks that we need. So, I don't know. When I say Gen 1, it feels like forever since then, because we've been running. This is
March, by the way.
Yeah, I know, it's March now, but, we've been running at 110 miles per hour. And I've got that, I've got a big thing on my wall of 110 kilometers per hour as the official speed limit, and a big cross around it because we don't really want to abide by speed rules because it's too slow, and I think I always think timing is critical, but you can't move too slow and you can't move too fast with certain things, so we're pushing the envelope every single day. There's urgency for every single thing, but we know that we need to be patient with certain things as well.
Yeah. So you launched in January, and you are now over nearly 2 to 3 months in.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very early days. You've got a slide here which is sort of more of a pictorial journey of where you are. If we sort of go to slide.
But we've been moving fast. I think we've got a big vision. I think the vision and putting this whole thing together has taken much longer. Yeah. So this is sort of culminating. I think if you go back 3 years, I exited a previous venture. I took 3 years probably to culminate with a BlinQ model. So it's not just from January 1. I think, I was waiting. I should
hope so.
Yeah. I just thought about this, as a concept that I came up with. No, I think it took 3 years for me to look at the mega trends of what I wanted to get into next. Because my previous venture, I did it for 12 years. We brought it public, and, it was a great journey.
Public means you listed it?
Yeah, we listed it. So
in Malaysia?
In the UK, actually.
Okay,
so,
in the UK.
Yeah, so we did an IPO in the UK. So I've gone through that journey before. I've raised, numerous...
So for those that are listening or watching, can you tell a little bit about the company?
It's a company called Pulse. So we brought that public in 05.
What did Pulse do?
We were in analytics, so we were in the digital space. So, when we exited that in 2014, if you will, then I got into the automation space. I was sort of looking at the mega trends of Asia. I was looking at mobile, and I was looking at e-commerce, and I just wanted the stars to align to see what I wanted to do next. And being an entrepreneur, you sort of I was thinking that downstairs while waiting for this interview, what am I doing here? And if you ask me this question, it's like walking through hot coal, while crunching broken glass, right? And it's like that every day. And you guys probably face the same thing, but you come back and do more and more of it.
Yeah,
it's like a drug.
You seek it out. Yeah,
it's like a drug.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, right?
Bob. Like we don't like getting comfortable.
Absolutely.
Even like success sometimes can be, it raises questions, right? Want to get out there and do it.
That's right. It's addictive, right? So, but it took me some time to culminate with the BlinQ model, and this is a very calculated model. I think we execute from Gen 1 till now. We know exactly what we want to do. Right. We've got this 7-stage of product development cycle ahead of us each time. So we methodically execute 7 stages ahead. So we always have a clear path and a playbook of how we want to move forward. And so far it's been good. We've raised some funds recently, so I'll probably talk about that separately. But that's given us the fuel to keep going. And there's still a lot to do, but I think we're moving extremely quickly. So it doesn't feel like it's only been since January 1.
Well, as you said, the seeds were sown many years ago.
That's right. Yeah.
So I guess investors and also potential hires and partners as well be interested in your previous life as well. Mm-hmm. So Pulse, you said, was 12 years growing that. Did you found that company?
I
as
did,
well?
yes.
So to found a company, list it in what exchange were you listed on in London?
AIM.
So you listed on AIM, so which is like the alternative investment market. Yep. So a lot of tech companies list on AIM. Yep. You lived in the fishbowl of being a public company, did 12 years in that. You learned a lot in that process. And when you exited that, you were still chairman of the company? Or?
Yeah, so for a while, for a transitionary period. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So you were fully involved in the operations and answerable as chairman to the shareholders as well. So
yeah, we had a whole bunch of institutional investors and private investors, etc. So very answerable to that.
So what are the parallels between? This is the question I want to ask, and I guess also on the behalf of people looking at what you're doing now with BlinQ, what are the parallels between that in terms of that journey and what you're doing at BlinQ? And also, what did you learn? Because you obviously want to do it better this time.
Oh, definitely. I think you going through multiple ventures, and that was my second venture, by the way. I did something before that we eventually sold as well, and we exited. So I've gone through numerous rounds of fundraising. I've done an IPO, some trade sales. And I've stepped on every single landmine there was. You make all the mistakes you can make. I'm now 44. I think I was speaking to one of the VCs this morning, and he said, you're at a perfect age. I think mathematically and statistically,
Absolutely.
43, 44 is when...
45, they say.
45? Okay. I'm about to peak.
Yeah.
So, that sort of age where sort of sweet spot where the success rate is much higher because you've been around the block. You made the mistakes. You've got the wide network, the domain expertise. And, you sort of come back a bit much wiser, a lot more. I used to have hair before, and now I look terrible in this video. But
you're looking good. You're still smiling. I think the key there is that that narrative about these 19-year-old kids leaving Stanford, setting up $1 billion app, right?
Yeah,
but
amazing,
that is very, very few and far between.
Sure.
The media loves it, yet I would speak to every single investor that I know. They would more happily back somebody in their 40s, for example, who has wealth of experience.
Sure.
And importantly, they know what's broken.
That's right.
They're not necessarily trying to change the world. They know there's something wrong here, and I want to fix that, and that may be worth billions, but I want to fix this first.
Yeah, so, I think to answer your question earlier on about what's the difference or what's the parallels, I think I'm much wiser now. I think the risk appetite is slightly different, but I think my vision is much bigger. I think the times have changed as well. I mean, fundraising rounds are much bigger. The technology is much cheaper now, so you can scale much faster.
What would you mean your vision's much bigger? Because IPOing and publicly listing a company is a big vision for a lot of people.
It's a big vision, but I've got a bigger appetite now.
Right.
So which is important.
Can I ask, how much was Pulse market cap? Do you know at the peak?
Well, when we IPO'd, I think it was around the region of 40 million US or something, and then it obviously grew over the years. So but I think now when I look at the fundraising rounds, 40 million is what people start with. That's entry level.
Yeah.
Right.
Different times.
Different time. People are talking about
market.
hundreds of millions of dollars of rounds. So I think if you look at the trajectory of some of the comparables, one of them recently, Zillingo, did extremely well. I mean, they raised in total about 308 million in a matter of 3 or 4 years. Right. The last round was 275 million. I mean, 10 years ago, you'd never even think or fathom that sort of fundraising.
Well, you had 1, 2, or 3 rounds maybe, and now it's like every letter in the alphabet.
Absolutely.
Right?
I lose count, right? Everyone's on E, F, G rounds, and it's amazing. So I think, you need to have the appetite to be playing in the game today. It's very different. And, thankfully, I've got that appetite back. And, I think if we do it right, we'll be able to be on that list with some of the other guys.
Yeah, I hope so. And you say you have an appetite to go bigger and bolder this time around.
Absolutely.
What is your vision? Like, how big could this... Is this a completely Asian thing? Is it a global thing? Is it a Southeast Asian thing?
I won't lie to you. I think we have a runaway of 3 to 4 years before there's going to be a trade sale or consolidation opportunity, because I think we're going to lay the groundwork and the infrastructure. Yeah. And at the end of the day, do I want to do another IPO? Look, once is enough in my lifetime. Yeah. Never say never, but I think the reality is that we'll be building the infrastructure and the groundwork to sort of merge with a much bigger player. Right,
that's the precedent here in Southeast Asia as well, isn't it? Right. I mean, the Chinese, it's easier for them simply to buy.
Sure. Do you want to buy versus build, right? So do you have a time? So for us, it's, by the time we look at this 3 or 4 years ahead, and if we can execute at scale to what we want to try and do and deliver on those promises, we're 3 or 4 years ahead of everyone else. Yeah. So that's the key. I mean, it's a race against time right now.
Okay. Clock's ticking. Let's have a look at where you are now. Back into the pitch deck. The last few slides, you talk about the raise and also the team as well. Yeah. You talk about your 7 steps as well, the product roadmap. Yeah, sure. I want to skip forward to this part here. Okay. Where are we now in terms of your fundraising roadmap? Have you just closed a round?
We did actually. We closed a round, I think it was 2 weeks ago.
So 2 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, we raised 2 million. And since then, surprisingly, this is another change of the times we play in now. I've probably had about 20 approaches from different people, from private investors to VCs to some sovereign wealth funds come to me, which 10 years ago would never happen. I mean, we had to beg to go through the kind of rounds that we had to do.
Yeah. So that 2 million was your seed.
That was our seed. Yeah.
Were they known to you? Your investors?
Yes, so those were private investors, sort of family office that came on that round. So I think that alone shows the appetite that we have. It's quite a big seed. 2 million is around probably the Series A for a lot of the companies in this part of the world. Yeah, but it
especially Malaysia as well. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think it gives you the idea and the sense of our growth trajectory expectations. Yeah. Our Series A is going to be much bigger. I think we've got 25 to 30% of that already subscribed in terms of interest.
So you're actively out there raising for Series? I mean, you're the boss. You're going to be raising non-stop now forever until you hit Z.
No, absolutely. Out. I mean, Graham, we're entrepreneurs. You're always raising. It's like always be closing. We're always raising. Always be raising. I think that's the thing. Yeah. And
so pre-Series A is already happening now.
Yeah, look, I think we thought, do we do a pre-Series A or a big Series A? I think based on the reception we've been receiving, I think we'll go straight for a Series A, but a largish one, and then most likely a B. So some of the B players have come to us already. We're also priming them up for what we're expecting at B. So I think this process will go through pretty quickly. We're pretty confident of that. I mean, we're talking to guys from China to Europe to a lot of them in Southeast Asia. I mean, there's about 200 big funds here themselves. Yeah. So when they see and understand what the scale of what we're trying to do, they love it, right? But you need to understand it. You need to be in the space. Then you'll see this sort of vision that we have. And at the end of the day, it's whether we can deliver on those promises. That's the big thing.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that is the challenge. That's what you're here to do. Yeah. So a couple more slides. like you talk about here, you have started this process. I know I don't know if this is relevant now that you may have actually closed this one, the 500k blocks as well.
Yeah, so that's sort of how we did the seed.
Okay, so that's done.
Yeah, so the next round is, I think to answer your question, while we're always raising, I think officially we haven't actually started the Series A as yet,
right?
Because there's a few milestones that we put in place, and we've just closed the 2 million 2 weeks ago, so we've got runaway. But there's certain milestones that we want to put in place before we officially go out and do the roadshow. But that said, we're entertaining a lot of discussions right now because there's a lot of people that have come to us, and we're also priming certain people up and giving them some sneak peeks. But I think we'll realistically officially go on the roadshow most likely early Q3.
Okay.
Which is probably July-ish period. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start that process in about 6 months' time.
Yeah, probably less than 6 months, probably about 3-4 months. We'll start our process.
I'm sure the conversations are starting now.
Oh, they are. I'm moving fast. Yeah.
Exactly. And then lastly, I think this now is the biggest challenge for people like yourself, Bob, more than the money, because you're quite competent at raising money. You tell a good story. You've got a fantastic background and a great product.
Thank you.
The next challenge, and this is a challenge you're facing as anybody in your situation across Southeast Asia, is talent. So finding people for your team. So
sure.
I know you've got like you have a slide here about yourself, and I guess this resonates with people as well. You are going to be hiring now on until eternity.
Yes.
And so I understand, because people watch this looking for teams and founders with great stories that they can be part of and work with and be mentored by, right?
And that's really important, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what your question is, how do we attract that sort of talent?
Yeah, and what just to sort of, like help them interface with you, what is BlinQ about and what is BlinQ not about? What kind of people are you looking for? What are you not looking for?
Sure. So, I think if you go back to those 3 parts of our business, we're looking for people in that sort of deep tech who understand AR, who understand things from Python to Ruby on Rails to PHP to SQL to SAP, ERPs, WMSs. I mean, I could go on with that sort of stuff, but and I'm quite a techie myself, as you can imagine. But and look, I think there's a lot of great talent out there. I mean, despite what people say, it's very competitive. But I think if you can attract them with the right story, they'd come and work with you. I mean, there's a lot of people that actually want to take that risk and ride on that bandwagon. But as a founder and as an entrepreneur, it's one thing. I think I always say that if you want to move fast, move alone, right? But if you want to move far, then you have to move together, and that's a challenge, because it's not easy to get everyone on the same vision, the same pace, the same intensity, and this is pretty intense stuff. But I think the talent's out there. I mean, we've got people from Indonesia to Malaysia to Singapore to wherever. There's a lot of talent out there, but it's also a war on talent right now. Everyone wants these guys, right? So. Attracting people so far hasn't been too bad. I mean, for the 3 parts of the business, the AR and the tech part, we've got some good people. We're hiring people in the logistics part. We're hiring people in the buyers and merchandising part, because there's lots of people from e-commerce, from fashion and stuff. So we actually have a lot of the talent in this region already. And I think as we move to those next few rounds of fundraising, etc., we'll most likely also entertain some M&A opportunities. So we may buy and consolidate companies that we can actually buy talent as well. Because I think if we want to have a geographic land grab into places like as far as Australia to Hong Kong to Southeast to Middle East or what have you, the only way that we can go into those markets fast is to acquire. Yeah.
In bulk, absolutely.
In bulk, and that would be the way to accelerate our growth. So I think it's part organic, part inorganic. I think there's a lot of great talent out there. If we can show them a great story and lead them with passion, etc., I think they'll come to you. Yeah,
you're early stage enough for somebody to hit that inflection point, right? That they can be part of that journey.
And yeah, that's right. And I think, looking at my experience with Pulse, for example, we attracted a lot of different people at different stages of our growth. We attracted the guys that were, hungry for startup. They wanted the flexibility. They wanted that sort of excitement, adventure in the beginning. As we got bigger, we needed professional managers, because those guys were too creative. They wanted to work at flexi hours and stuff. We needed professional managers, put structure in place. Then we became a public company. We needed the corporate governance or whatnot.
And accountants.
And accountants and lawyers and everything else. And the guys that came in at startup weren't attracted to that anymore. We became a different beast. So, we have to also realize that we may attract different people at different times of our life cycle. And very few people will follow you throughout that journey because you're growing so fast and you're changing the culture and whatnot. But that's life. And you know, a lot of these guys have gone on to build their own businesses. Fortunately, some of them have actually come back to me from Pulse and are with me now with BlinQ, including my CFO. So fantastic story. So I've got trusted people that I've worked for before, and they're now with me in BlinQ.
Yeah, you see that. I mean, you see that across a lot of success stories, like with Lazada, for example, you know, or PayPal.
Sure.
Or Yahoo, you know, these companies, they bring their teams with them.
The mafia,
Exactly, these mafias.
Yes.
We're very positive, though. Bob, it's been really, you know, inspirational listening to you and what you're doing. And I love the fact that you had success and then you, like, rather than get comfortable, you decided to challenge yourself again. And that's sort of in your blood, your DNA, if you like. And I think people get that. Well, I believe it's a curse and a blessing.
It's
and
a curse, yes.
We'll take it to our graves, right?
Absolutely.
We just have
and we're doing Iron Man, both of us.
Well, there you go. And
on top of that.
Exactly. But that is a good sort of, like, you know, example of how that sort of plays out in day-to-day life,
Sure,
isn't it? It's
absolutely.
like, you know, you love the challenge. You love big challenges that people think
We love
you
the
can't
pain.
do.
We love the pain.
Exactly. We put ourselves through this stuff.
That's
and
right.
Okay, so obviously people have listened to your story, potential investors along the road, potential hires, people join the team.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else out there in that ecosystem that you want to sort of appeal to that may be interested in what you're doing?
Look, you know, I think it's been a great discussion. Thanks for having me. You know, I think if we can at least have reached certain people and impacted them in a positive way, other fellow entrepreneurs perhaps that we've inspired, you know, that would be great. Look, we're always looking for great investors, great talent, and you know, hopefully would have imparted a bit of knowledge and examples and inspiration to our entrepreneurs. Then, you know, our job is done. But I hope I'll be back here again.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And I really get the feel that this journey is going to go somewhere. And, you know, I'm not just saying that because, you know, you've come here. But, you know, when I look at, I mean, I've sat through with hundreds of founders here. Sure. And you can see, like, that sort of history that somebody's had, and then how they just go about the stuff that's off the CV.
Right.
You know, like, this is what they're authentic.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people live the startup lifestyle, the entrepreneur lifestyle, but there actually isn't them in their sort of DNA. Sure. And you have identified the problem so well, you know, and it always starts with that problem. And you've identified the pain point of what an industry have. Right. And then you all, on top of that, you know, the rising tide, that is so important, because if you're ahead of the curve and you've got the middle classes, that digital population, you know, and the fact that the immediacy of now, right, or the tyranny of now is all coming into play together, it just makes for that sort of perfect storm of opportunity. Absolutely. So I really do hope this works out positively.
Fingers crossed.
And 6 months, 12 months, let's get you back on.
Absolutely.
Let's take a pulse of where you are.
Sure.
No pun intended. Yes. But it'd be great to see how the journey's going.
Thanks, Ram.
Bob Chua, everybody, founder of BlinQ. You heard it here. What's the best way to reach out to you? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah, happy to do that, or send me an email at bob.chua@blink.fashion.
Excellent. You heard it here first. And this is hopefully a potential unicorn in the making.
Well, let's hope.
And go back to this.
I was aiming for decacorn myself, but
sorry,
I'll settle with unicorn.
The time moves on, but hopefully people go back and watch this interview and say, well, that was you sort of in the first few months of your journey. That would be awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bob.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.